Okay, so what is the function of words, language, symbols, and thoughts? Well, they symbolize something, they represent something, but they don't represent themselves. They always refer to an idea or to something else. So we already have to make a very important distinction between what it means for something to represent itself and to represent something else. Okay, so there is a distinction between the intrinsic meaning of, let's say, a thought itself and what it means for our knowledge. We have to become aware of the fact that we can never penetrate the intrinsic meaning of a thing itself, because in order to gain some knowledge about the thing, we need something else to refer to it, to represent it. We can never use the thing itself to refer to itself. Right? So this is a very important thing to understand. And here's an example to make this clear. When you pick a banana and you look at it, what kind of tools do you have to know that you're looking at a banana? Well, you have your thoughts, which are pointing out that you're looking at a banana. But of course, your thoughts are just thoughts. That's what they are intrinsically. Your thoughts are not literally bananas themselves. Okay? So, but also notice that you need other thoughts to refer to other thoughts. So a thought itself also can't represent itself. Other thoughts are required to have some knowledge about other thoughts. So no matter what, it is fundamentally impossible for a thing itself to represent itself. In order to have some knowledge about something, you need something which represents something else and not itself. And this is a crucial part of understanding the foundation of knowledge and thinking. So knowledge is already misleading in the sense that you will never acquire the intrinsic meaning of anything. We can study and observe a banana on a microscopic level all the way up to the macroscopic level. We can dissect it, we can measure or calculate its mass, its weight, the amount of potassium. We can study how it can grow in the most efficient ways, etc. We can have a whole bunch of knowledge that refers to everything that has to do with the banana. Yet all of that knowledge is represented by everything except the banana itself. So all of that knowledge really has nothing to do with the banana itself. Now, of course, all of that knowledge is still useful and practical when it comes to survival and technology and such. But it has nothing to do with the true nature of the banana. So knowledge is everything but the true nature of everything. Well, actually, it is the true nature of everything, but only when it is not represented by anything else. You know what I mean? So it only becomes the true nature of everything when you literally stop representing it with thoughts. And you must understand that the true nature of reality is the only true thing that exists. In reality, there only is the true nature of reality. But since our knowledge does not represent the true nature of reality, it might be true to claim that our knowledge is not really real. It's a world apart that really has nothing to do with reality itself, even though it's useful for us. So this is another distinction. Our knowledge is useful to us and it works for us, but only for us. For reality itself, it is meaningless because reality itself is unrepresentable. It can't represent itself with knowledge or whatever mechanism of understanding that we believe is incorporated into the fabric of reality. And it's a damn shame, actually, that we are so ignorant and act so foolishly towards the true nature of reality. Somehow we still believe that our theories, our philosophies, our religions, our poetic writings and musical expressions, our deepest contemplations, etc., that they have the capacity to represent the truth about reality. But no, we always end up translating all of our expressions and contemplations into a redundant amount of thinking, including myself. We are addicted to ask for each other's opinions all the time, which only adds more and more thinking. A redundant amount of thinking which represents everything except the one and only true nature of reality itself, which we're all chasing so damn hard. So it's just ironic, actually. It's quite laughable. Anyway, let's continue. So the true nature of reality is universal. And that counts for everything inside of reality. The true nature of a rainbow contains the same kind of true nature as a pile of horseshit. They both are equally real and their true nature is exactly the same. And that counts for simply everything in existence. It's all equal. So when it comes to the true nature of everything, there is no difference between anything. The only difference there is, though, is our knowledge about everything. Even though the true nature of every thought that refers to a rainbow and a pile of horseshit are equal, for us, of course, they are different. We put them in different categories. Their meaning is totally different to us. So difference is only possible when the true nature of whatever represents itself as something else. Makes sense, right? That's how we treat our thinking. We don't focus on the thoughts themselves, we focus on what they are referring to, because that's the purpose of thoughts, essentially, to represent something else. Now again, we can make another important distinction between absolutism and relativity, and between objectivity and subjectivity. So everything in the universe is essentially itself in the state of their true nature, and it's all equal. This state is absolute and objective. And as soon as our thoughts start to represent something else, it suddenly becomes relative and subjective. Interesting, right? When something is not itself, it's relative and subjective. But that's the only way how we can know something, through relativity and subjectivity. So now we will dig into the relative aspect of it, which basically means that we can only know something by contrast and comparison. When a thing is itself and it just represents itself, it can't compare itself with itself, because there is no contrast or difference. Obviously, it's not different from itself. And so we can't perceive it. We can't know it. At least not through thinking. But of course, when a thing starts to represent something else, there is contrast and comparison. And so, what's important to understand is how the process of a thought which represents itself can shift into representing something else. I don't know. It kind of does that simultaneously, because when a thought pops up in your brain, it already represents something else, while at the same time it actually just represents itself. So I don't know. Maybe it could be that it's just an illusion, because in reality, thoughts just represent themselves, and they actually don't refer to anything else. They are just themselves in their state of their true nature, So the idea that they refer to something else might just be a hallucination and non-existent. Now, that would mean that the purpose of the brain, the purpose of thinking, is to hallucinate everything. And apparently, we can only perceive reality through hallucination, because the true nature of reality is unperceivable, because in order to perceive something you need contrast. So what kind of contrast are we talking about? Well, it seems to be the contrast between the true nature of reality and hallucination. But of course, the word hallucination is a paradox because that means that you're perceiving something which does not exist. So we can delete that word. But the true nature of reality is also paradoxical because there is no contrast within the true nature of reality. So it's unperceivable, and so we can also delete that concept. So what are we left with? Well, it's got to be non-duality again. Anyway, so let's continue. Let me drink first. Let's say that you and your thoughts are in their true state of nature or their natural state, and you're reading a book. Now, the book itself, with all the sentences, are also in their natural state. So you, your thoughts, and the book are all in their natural state, such that nothing represents something else. Everything is just itself. So there is no difference between anything. There can only be a difference when something starts to represent something else. So in a sense, there is no difference between you, your thoughts, and the book. It's all one, basically. But now what happens is you start to misinterpret your thoughts for something which is not your thoughts. They start to represent something outside of themselves. And all of a sudden there is a difference between you, your thoughts, and the book. Now before this difference, you were unable to make a distinction between you, your thoughts, and the book. You're unable to tell yourself that you are or aren't yourself, or that you are or aren't your thoughts, or that you are or aren't the book. So you either are none of them or you are all of them. Okay? So there is no self-reference possible. That's what it means to be in the natural state. Okay? This is another very important fact about the natural state. Within the natural state, self-reference is not possible. So you don't know who you are, what you are, or that you are. You lose all sense of self. But from the moment that you believe that self-reference is possible, that's actually an illusion because your thoughts are misinterpreting themselves as you. Even though you believe there is a distinction between you and your thoughts. So you are having these thoughts which are saying, this is me, this is who I am. And you can perceive those thoughts, you are aware of them. So how is it possible that you are perceiving thoughts which are saying that they are you? So there is a distinction between you and a bunch of thoughts which are saying, no, I am you. You see the problem? The reason why this is such a colossal illusion is because our thoughts seem to originate out of us, right? It really seems like we are producing our thoughts, and so we kind of identify ourselves with our thoughts. But the problem is that as soon as we become aware of our thoughts and we start to identify them as our thoughts, they really are just things within our awareness and not awareness itself. So how can you be inside of your own awareness while you are actually awareness itself? So whatever you become aware of is not awareness itself. It's impossible to take awareness itself and place it inside itself. Just not possible. You can't take your own body and place it inside your own body. This is a self-referential paradox. Okay, so no matter what, self-reference is just absolutely impossible. Nothing in reality can refer to itself because that's absolute truth. That's the natural state. And the natural state is selfless. Deal with it. Okay, so why aren't we selfless then? Why aren't we just selfless? Why are we so caught up in this massive self-delusion? Well, We aren't. We aren't. We never were. That's why it's an illusion. It's a paradox. An illusion contradicts itself because in reality the illusion was never there. So an illusion itself doesn't exist. That's the mindfuck. But the problem is that we believe the illusion is real. We believe it exists. So there never was an illusion to begin with. That's the ultimate illusion. Oh, so everything is fine then. There are no illusions. It's just reality. No. Everything is illusion, including illusion itself. There is no mechanism responsible for the production of illusions. The mechanism itself is the illusion. That's why this illusion exists, because it doesn't. It must exist so that you can debunk the fact that it doesn't. You see, an illusion must seem real in the first place for it to be an illusion. It must seem real for it to be unreal. If it was already unreal from the beginning, it wouldn't be an illusion. It must seem real. It must seem so fucking real. You would swear to God it's absolutely real and it exists. You know? And that's what the self is. That's why thoughts seem to represent something else while they only represent themselves as things incapable of self-reference, because it's an absolute illusion. It seems absolutely real, while in reality it's absolutely unreal. In fact, thoughts must represent something else for them to be what they truly are, namely just things which represent themselves. That's the function of the illusion. And it must seem absolutely real for it to be a perfect illusion. And that's why the self must exist. The self must exist for it to be non-existent and selfless. And that's why existence exists. It must exist for it to be non-existent. Because the true nature of everything is illusion and paradoxical, and therefore its opposite must seem absolutely real for it to be illusory and paradoxical. This is yet another very important point. And that's why there is no difference between reality and illusion. They are the same. They are equally absolutely real and unreal. Thoughts represent themselves just as much as they represent everything else. There is no difference between themselves and everything else. So there is no difference between a thought referring to itself as being incapable of self-reference or being capable of referring to something else.